internet, Yulia speaking. So I've been ill for the past few days and my voice has only now returned back to normal where I can actually speak. When I do get ill, I tend to spend a lot of time in bed, as one does, recovering, and during that time I tend to reread a lot of books, and I didn't really realize this about myself until like a few days ago. For some reason, when I'm ill, I don't want to start new books. Maybe because I'm uncertain if they're gonna bring my mood up or not, so I'm like hazy about it. But if it's a book that I know that I love, I know it's gonna cheer me up. I guess that's where I'm going with that. So I want to talk about some of the books that I love to reread and reread all the time. It's not always a great idea because that takes away a lot of time from reading new books and new releases and stories that I might actually enjoy as well. But it's just, you know, when a book holds a place close to your heart, you want to just keep reading it all the time. So I guess we're going back to the beginning, and my rereading obsessions started off with Twilight. Here it is. This is probably my first love. I've reread these books so many times, hence why they've got the pretty edition with the red pages. No one needs an introduction to what Twilight is about. For the longest time, I had almost a tradition, an unintentional one, of rereading it every single summer, and in recent years it hasn't been as much. I feel like I only reread bits and pieces lately, but still I feel like another reason why I reread things so often is that you kind of hold in your mind the memory of the book, but personally when I open a book I remember what I was doing when I was reading that part of the story, and it's kind of like the book is holding a part of your memories too. I know that sounds so like cheesy and everything, but I don't know, I think it's just nice to go back to it and think of like what you were doing and who you were when you were reading them. Shatter Me is another one that holds quite a few of my memories because I marathoned that during a trip while I was going back home, and I just remember like sitting at the airport and then on the plane and reading like in the car and stuff, and it's memories. Shatter Me is about this girl called Juliet that can't touch people because her touch literally kills them. For the past year or so? No. For some reason I've got the number 162 days in my mind, but I don't know if that's right. She's been in an asylum. At the beginning of the story, she gets out and is basically about to be used as like a military weapon. And that's all I'm gonna give you, but there is a lot more to that story than just that. Like there's romance, there's sort of adventure, there's also like a lot of growth. I feel like that was the first time that I read a book where you could genuinely see how much the characters grew from the beginning of the first book to the end of the last one, and Tara Murphy just is amazing at changing perspectives and like your perspective as in like of the story and the characters. It was great. I don't want to give anything away. If you haven't read it yet, I mean, what have you been doing? And then Vampire Academy is like the third one of my adventure ones, because I read Vampire Academy abroad while we were in Austria, I think. And this thing is 6 books, so I marathoned through that very quickly. And it's weird to think about because while I was reading it, it was actually a few days before Christmas that we were in Austria, and our flight was like Christmas Eve. And then the day after, my brother got married. So around me reading those books, there was a lot of stuff happening. Vampire Academy doesn't really need any introductions either. It's about an academy where vampires go to school, and the vampire system is really unusual there. They're like born into vampirism, and they have like other sub-races where it's like half human, half vampire, and then there are like good vampires and bad vampires, and it's all very interesting, but also like the characters are amazing and the relationships are fantastic, and don't be fooled by the cheesy covers. Then I've got 3 cheesy and self-indulgent things. Perfect Chemistry, like the series, the Hush Hush series, and 50 Shades of Grey. These are all completely self-indulgent because they all have some cute moments that I keep returning to every single time. I don't think I've ever reread any of these 3 the whole way through, beginning to end. So when I do go back to them, I normally have like bookmarked pages that I kind of go back to and like read that chapter, and I'm just like, all the emotions. And then I go on with my day. That's actually a really good strategy because sometimes I have some time to read, and after that I need to like go off somewhere, and I can't afford to start something new because I get hooked into books really quickly. Whereas if I know where the story is going and I just reread that one chapter that I have bookmarked, I'm like, I feel so much better now, but I can also go on with my day. I have saved 2 absolute favorites for the last 2 books. One of them is the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I think one of the reasons that I really loved that was how the world building and the story just went in some incredible directions, and it's YA, but it never felt cheesy or childish, and all the relationships and the development felt real, even though there is a lot of fantasy and a lot of like unbelievable things happening. It's just the connection is really there for everything. If you haven't heard of it yet, I don't know how you could have not heard of it, but it starts off as a Beauty and the Beast retelling with kind of fairies as like the beast, whatever. But then the second 2 books just knocked that completely out of the park, and you're reading something magnificent. That's all I'm saying. The final thing that I'm really excited to mention, because I haven't heard people talking much about this, but I really love the Captive Prince series. It's not necessarily like the easiest read. It has some trigger warnings, and it tends to be pretty graphic in many different aspects. But what has me hooked on it and returning to it all the time is the characters, their relationships, the connection. Again, like for me in books, it's super important that it feels realistic, even if, and especially if, it's in completely different worlds. The characters just really fascinate me, and the writing in this book is beautiful. The author manages to use unusual words for really simple things pretty often, and I find myself like looking them up in dictionaries and stuff, and these are like, the words are so beautiful. I cannot. And it doesn't feel like academic or like posturing or something, you know, because sometimes you read academic writing and like people are uselessly throwing around these big words when they could have used something much more to the point. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like beautiful storytelling where you use like a complex, more beautiful word to make it look even better than it was originally. A little bit on story. You have kind of 4 empires, and 2 of them are constantly at war with each other. Suddenly the southern empire has a big overthrow of like their king dies, and their prince is assassinated. And basically what the kingdom doesn't realize is that the actual prince is taken as a slave and gifted to their enemy. I don't know what else to say, because please go into it with just that synopsis. It is amazing. It grows in scale. It has a lot of politics between the empires, but it also has a lot of like character, emotion, and connection. I hope that you enjoyed this little rant about books that I love to the extent that I reread them all the time. Like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more. I put up videos every Wednesday and Saturday. End of rant.